Episode 108 of Above Ground Podcast, Cone of Shame.
Are you ready to lace up your boots, throw up your horns, and jump into the pit? Then let's stomp the stigmas of mental illness. It's time for Above Ground Podcast. Now, Will Foley and Timothy Patrick.
This episode is brought to you by Inner Balance Massage Therapy, located downtown Boston Spa. Inner Balance offers all styles, a long list of products, and relief from the everyday wear and tear. Call Nancy at 518-588-4949 or go online and book an appointment at www.innerbalancement.com. Call Nancy and mention this ad and she'll give you $15 off. Nancy at Inner Balance Massage Therapy.
Hey, what is up, everyone? Welcome to Above Ground Podcast.
Above Ground Podcast, because you can't serve below.
You know who that is? You down with TPP?
You sure do know me.
Yeah. What up, Timmy?
What's up, Will?
What's going on, buddy? You recovered now from our last few episodes there?
Back in the studio?
Yeah.
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 What are we talking about?
We're going to talk about the thing that we don't like the most. Stigma.
Stigma.
It's time to get out the boots.
Stomp.
Do some stomping.
Do some stomping.
Grr.
Will brought his Doc Martens tonight.
That's right.
Stigma was borrowed from the Latin word stigmat.
Stigmat.
Yeah, meaning mark or brand.
Wow.
And then ultimately comes from the Greek stitzen, meaning to tattoo.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Huh.
Yeah, so stigma in English, in the earliest English, first referred to a scar or like a brand.
Yeah, scar. That's more like it, a scar.
Scar. Yeah.
Stigmatizing people scars them even more.
Sure. It's like a wall, right?
It's
A wall that separates people from doing certain things.
It can be. It certainly can be. I don't necessarily think that it starts out to be that way. I think it's, and again, the way culture is, and
Right.
I know we've had some very fun discussions about culture
this
recently.
one definitely, I think.
But this is definitely propagated by culture.
Sure.
Or what a bad culture is.
Right. There's a better way to say it.
Yeah, and that's really what it all boils down to, is that
The bad side of
culture and,
Right.
and what we think how we perceive ourselves,
right.
and
Or
the
just
roles we play,
how we perceive others, and how we perceive, how we think about maybe things that we can't see.
True, because you can't see stigma,
Right.
And you
can't
see.
I might not be able to see your illness.
You might not be able to see my
know what I mean?
broken heart. You might not
Right.
be able to see my broken brain. But not like you can see my broken arm. That
Right,
Oh,
yeah.
let me sign your cast.
Right.
Oh, let me sign your brain. No, get the fuck out of
Sign
here.
your brain.
No, get the fuck out of here, because you can't see it and you don't care about it.
For some reason, I wrote down, this is when I think of stigma, I think of discriminate and judgment and stereotype, but in a negative.
Yeah, that's the thing about it is that you can stereotype people. Yeah, it's just, that's all bad. It's all bad, all that stuff. But
Yeah, I mean,
but
I get what you're saying. though. I just said, that's why I said use that in a negative way, like, just, I guess, associate it with more emotion and more of something negative.
Well, stigma is negative. There's no doubt about it.
Right. I guess.
And again, no, I don't.
Yeah, there's nothing good about stigma, right?
There's nothing good about stigma. I mean, again, well, yes, okay. The thing about stigma is when you see it, if you can call it out, then at least you can thank the ignorance of it to be able to call it out. again, and like,
I see what you're saying.
if I'm going with this, if I'm going full on with growth, then I gotta look at things.
No, that's a good way.
I gotta reframe them. You're the reframing master, or whatever the fuck you're called there, the restructuring dude, or whatever,
restructuring mentor,
the restructuring mentor, TPP over here,
Yeah.
and so if you're gonna reconstruct it and build a better house, man, or build a better boat, then you got to look at it. You got to look at everything as a learning experience. And that's a difficult thing, man. I'm saying it more because it's more for my own personal feeling than it is because again, it's
I think it's a good way to look at things. It's a good way to, I guess, put a start line on your perception.
Well, I think so. Take the word stigma, and I think by saying that you got to look at it as at least the place that you can call out something, then that's a good starting place, and it kind of stops it. Now, it may not stop it for good. It may only stop it for that moment, but it may not be your fight to try to stop it for good. It's just that you just happen to be there for that one. Am I making?
Yeah, no, I get it.
Make
I
sense?
get what you're saying. Yeah. I do. I get what you're saying. Yeah.
I mean, I think stigma is a big tent. Because you can be at the very beginning of the tent.
There's levels, right?
There's levels of stigma. And I think now, obviously, if you work in a culture, shall we say, a negative culture of, toxic masculinity and not even just toxic masculinity, but just toxic
in general.
Just toxic in general, you're going to come up against a lot of stigma.
Yeah.
And you may have the energy someday to fight it, or you may only have the energy to fight it one day, and the next day, you're being dragged down by it.
That's fair.
And unfortunately, man, now in this day and age of mental health being a almost cliche, because now we're having workplace discussions about mental health now. You didn't have them 15 years ago. You didn't have them 5 years ago. You don't even talk about the subject when it affects one of your own,
right,
and they die. But yet you're going to throw a booklet on a table and say, "Oh, read about this."
Right.
No, fuck you,
right,
because you're not going to be strong enough to have the discussion.
It's like checking
it's
off
window
a box
dressing.
for them.
It is. That's all it is. It's saying, "Oh, well, you need to have a diverse discussion now." Oh, well, now I guess we'll just pick and choose what that diversity is. We're not going to go with true diversity. We're going to go with what the organization deems diverse.
Right.
Oh, you can't do your job now because you may have a brain injury. Oh, I'm sorry. Get the fuck back out there and do it.
Right.
And no, sorry.
And I think, what, listening to that, what you just said, for some reason I'm thinking there's an ignorance behind stigma.
Oh, there's a big ignorance.
Okay.
And there's a lot of projection. Okay.
Okay.
Because I guarantee you there's people who partake in the stigmatization that are actually feeling the same things, but they're too afraid to say it, or they're afraid of the stigma. Oh, absolutely, dude. Absolutely. And dude, look.
Okay.
You can be as big and tough as you want.
Right.
And you can have all the muscles, you can have all the fights under your belt. You can go outside and whip somebody's ass in a bar room. You can take on that physical thing, but your emotions, oh, that's for sissies. Oh, you know why it's for sissies? Because you can't fucking handle it. That's why.
Exactly.
That's why. Because you ain't been in the trenches. Because you ain't done the work to say, oh, I'm a big tough guy now. No. Sorry, man.
No, it takes way more strength to, address your emotion, talk about your emotion.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Acknowledge it, and yeah, for sure. I mean, that's probably. I mean, I guess that within itself probably, partakes or is a variable in the stigma itself.
Yeah. And it also depends on your line of work and who you work for as opposed to what you do for a living.
Sure.
Because there's going to be different stigma for everything.
Right.
I mean, we've had a lot of discussions from first responders about suicide, about PTSD, like Rob Lathan, who is probably going to be on again in the upcoming new year, because we've got some cool new things that we're working on behind the scenes here. But Rob is a firefighter and first responder from Canada, and he had talked about all the stigma and with the PTSD and everything.
Yep.
And I look, I will say this, going through my own personal mental health crisis and working for the federal government. Okay, I was told to call EAP. I called EAP. Okay, unfortunately though, EAP can only go so far, and then when your workplace gets involved, things become very, very bad, because your workplace does not give a shit about you. Okay, if you work in the public sector, okay, private sector is different. Private sector employers have a lot more to lose by not answering to certain things. Okay, public sector people, be it state government, county government, federal government, okay? They have a bottom line to protect. And if you're costing them money, or you're going to put them out, or actually have to make them fill out another piece of paper and add it to the other 10 that they've already done, are going to whoop you around more than anything, because they don't want to do the work. And again, it just causes them more headaches, because you've got your heart's broken. Oh, I'm so sorry, but I can't do that paperwork today because I got to be out at 5 to get to my kid's 15th soccer practice this week, because he's going to be Pele. And again, the human condition unfortunately is part of the problem, but it's also the reason that we have the stigma that we have. I think because again, we don't have an emotional language. We don't talk about emotions.
No, and that's what I was going to say. Is I think a lot of it is education. I think being educated on this and having awareness. Like you said in the beginning, we didn't have this 10 years ago. But in all fairness, maybe they didn't realize what kind of a need, you know what I mean? Like,
well, are they realizing? But here's the question:
they probably should have.
Are they realizing a need, or are they checking off the box? Because now all of a sudden, like, right. We literally. I mean,
I know. I'm trying to.
It created a podcast. It created a podcast for us.
Right. I'm going to use your words, and I'm trying to look at it from the growth standpoint. It's one of those things where it's like I try to tell myself that everybody's doing the best they can, just because it makes it less stressful for me. You know what I mean? When I to try and not personalize things and just have a better understanding of the situations. It's more, I guess, easier for me to have that kind of.
See, I'm gonna play you now. I'm putting the TPP hat on. I don't think that people are doing the best they fucking can. I think most people are just doing enough to get through. And look, man, I've been there. Okay,
oh, yeah.
And I find myself there weekly, where I'm just doing enough to get through, because that's just what's entailed, and and it seems, and my minuscule seems to be good enough. So why bother when you know that there's not anything on the other side of it?
Right.
And then, and I think that plays into part of it is that, this is going to make more work for me. Well, shit, I'm not going to say anything, because fuck, what happens if he's out for 3 weeks? Then I got to cover all the work. So it's. And it plays into other people's things too.
Yeah.
And yes, are we all doing the best we can and yet not doing nearly as much as we could? Yes. And that unfortunately is the yin and yang of the human condition, man. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's the.
And there's and unfortunately, especially when you were saying in like a public sector, there's so many hands in that pot.
Well, right. There's so many, and there's different stipulations, and you've got a lot of different mechanisms that run that machine. And unfortunately, mechanisms that would work for most people don't always work in that situation. Because not everybody is the same in public sector either. You know what I mean? Some people people get cushy desk jobs or avoid doing their job to get a cushy desk job and still push a broom anyway. But you know, it's just like one of those things.
I'm gonna read something quick about this is from November 2019 from Mahaney's. 1 in 5 American adults have mental illness. 22% of youth experience serious mental illness in a given year. But then on the flip side of this, they say only 56% of undiagnosed individuals, I'm sorry, I think I said that wrong. 56% of undiagnosed individuals do not receive treatment.
That just means there's a lot of unregulated people walking around.
Well, that and you know, I would think that some stigma probably is a variable as to why they don't.
Stigma is definite. Now, well, so you take into consideration, some people have a job where they get drug tested all the time, so they can't even take an antidepressant because it would come up as a drug, and like they don't even have those options depending on what you do for a living. So you can't even exercise the option to even try to get yourself some relief.
Right. Like your job, right. So your job
now that's not stigma, that's just because of the job. Now you throw that into an organization or anything.
I don't know. I feel like it could be a tad of stigma, a little slice.
I don't think it is, because there's certain like
if you're like a jet pilot or something like that.
Yeah, if you're a jet pilot, if you're a bus driver,
right,
or any of those things, you don't have the options.
Heavy machine
operators that other people who push a desk, or a desk jockey who push computer keys all day have. Okay, just like now.
Not saying you guys don't have worth. You all have worth, but
no. Well, nobody was even saying that. That wasn't even.
I know.
Like, you don't need to justify that one. Yeah, dude. There's some projection right there.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah. Because I would like there. Nothing was said in that. But it was funny how you felt the need to make sure that we knew that.
I like to cover my bases. That's all.
Yeah, no. Nobody's saying that.
Okay. But
again, not everybody has the same options. We have options. We just don't always have the same options. So is that a cause of stigma? Yeah, maybe, but it also could be the fact that some of these medicines do brutal things to people and nobody really knows what they're doing. So you could be great 6 months, and then your dose goes up because you're having a really hard time. You hit a crisis mode, and that dose sends you to dozing off in your seat.
Right?
Can't you know what I mean? So you can't.
So do you think if we had a better handle on medications, do you think that would help?
No, because again, you're adding something to the body that is foreign to it. And you're often adding it in percentages that the body doesn't create. And dude, look, there's people who need medicine.
Yeah, no, I know.
There's people, and certainly there's people who benefit from it greatly. There's people who need it to just be able to wake up in the morning. And then there's other people who could get away from using it, but choose not to because it's easier than actually doing the CBT or doing the DBT or going to a therapist to talk and stuff. But I don't know if that's
if it would have
I don't necessarily. I mean, obviously, stigma plays a part in whether you seek treatment for sure. Okay, without a doubt. And again, stigma plays into the fact that if somebody's suicidal, they don't talk up, they don't speak up because either they're afraid of what's going to happen because they've been desensitized to everything that's going on. I put it this way: if we were just better human beings to one another, we would actually lose a lot of this stuff. I think that there's a lot of this stuff, like anxiety, general anxiety disorder. Dude, does it really need a pill? Like, do you really need a pill all the time for general anxiety? Like, I don't think you do. Just like you don't need a pill for depression all the time.
No, if we again, if we taught more of things that you can do to help decrease symptoms, learn about anxiety and where it stems from and what, maybe to what you're thinking and try to be mindful and watch your thoughts, that kind of thing can all be
It does, but now granted, if you're in a scattered brain, you're lucky you can put you're lucky you can put socks on, let alone figure out what the fuck's wrong with you.
Yeah, no, I know, but I was kind of going off of like if you just had like a generalized anxiety,
Well, generalized anxiety to somebody though might be debilitating to one person, where if you've lived with it for so long, you might just be like, hey, I'm anxious, but I'm all right.
That's my baseline, dude. I don't know.
That's my baseline. I don't know any better. So it's,
Yeah. Okay. That's good.
So I don't necessarily, but back to stigma. I think stigma starts from misunderstanding and ignorance.
Yeah.
And
I agree.
And I think it also stems. Now the crazy thing is that we've had a lot of conversations with a lot of different people. Mm-hmm. A recent conversation we had, and we've had these conversations, are about people's misconceptions about suicide. And just like me, in my 20s, I said, I would never get that low. I'd never do anything like that to myself. And in my mid-30s here, to late 30s here, I was starting to put a plan together to end my life. So who, you know what I mean? Where did I come from to get to that point? Well, it was, my hate of myself for one, and my roles were completely, literally fucking shredded. Every role that I played in my life seemed to be coming apart, like a paper towel roll, and you pull it apart, and it's just like one long piece of cardboard.
Or at least you thought it was pulling apart.
Well, it felt what I perceived, it felt like it was coming apart.
I got you.
And it did, really. I mean, it really did come apart, and then it sprung back together in a different form. And I'm grateful for all that.
Yeah, like a shapeshifter.
Yeah, well, we can be shapeshifters.
Yeah.
Absolutely, we can be shapeshifters. Just like we can be mind shifters. We can be mindset shifters.
Yeah. No, for sure.
We can be stigma stompers.
What do you think, what do you think that maybe, let's just say that there's somebody listening to this episode and they feel like they want to maybe stand up to stigma or just do something small, maybe if it's a post on Facebook or at work they can do this or tell somebody. What do you think would be a good thing to say to somebody?
Stay the fuck off Facebook.
I know.
Don't do that, dude. This is not a social media thing, man. Like Tim and I go back and forth on the culture thing, on the social media thing, okay? And I still think that there's a lot of good things that culture offers, and there's some shitty things that culture offers, just like there is for everything, because there is. You can never have one without the other, because it just doesn't work that way. I think that the only way that you can really combat stigma is by starting to look at your own thoughts about your world, okay? Why do you view this as this? Why is this such a problem with you? Why don't you agree with this? What is it about this that you don't agree with? And what is it really? Is it something that you were taught? Is it something that you learned? Is it something that you experienced that said that this isn't this? Because again, these are just your perceptions. These are just your experiences. Just because you have that experience doesn't mean that everybody has that experience. So you have to start with your own housekeeping. You have to start with what's going in, what's gone in, and you got to take the time to say, okay, well, why do I feel this way? Why do I feel this way? What is it really about that makes me think that this is right? And then you start just picking it apart, and you just start pulling the threads apart.
Yeah, you're
absolutely.
I agree with that 100%.
And unfortunately, most of us don't do that. most of us aren't woke. Most of us aren't cracked open like an egg. Most of us don't have the light shining through us. We're just trying to get through the darkened room and find the door and find the light switch that hopes to end the nightmare sometime soon. Because that's really where most of us are living in. And it's and we all do in varying degrees
Sure.
at certain times.
Sure.
But I don't think that you can even start to talk about ending stigma until you start understanding your language, how you talk to others, how you view others, and how you talk to yourself. Because that's really where it all stems from. And again, and dude,
that's good.
you know, it's and look, I'm a 49-year-old guy, okay? We used to throw words around on the playground like they didn't mean anything, okay? Certain words, like especially that we used to call each other all the
Sure.
time,
And
those are very negative. And those
we
are
didn't
very
know any
negative
better.
words. Those are very negative words, and I've since cut those types of words out of my speech. However, even though at the time it wasn't meant to be derogatory towards a
Right.
specific person, what I didn't realize is that it was. And that's a stigma. And that's a stigma that caused a lot of people, man, to not come out and things like that. Because, you know, like...
No, I get it.
And again, I
definitely
like...
was the same thing.
And, you know, there's part of me that feels guilty for thinking that and saying those words. But again...
But you now you know better, so you do better.
Well, I know better and I do
Right,
better,
so-
and we don't use those words.
Right.
I don't use any of those words
Yeah.
anymore.
No, I get it. And I guess I was just saying that more or less so like go easy on yourself. You shouldn't really kind of
Well, you
beat
can't.
yourself up
Right.
over
You can't.
it, you know.
Right. Look, what you do is you have to start where you're at. It's always about starting where you're at. Because again, and we've had these discussions in recent weeks about about our prehistoric ancestors and us and blah blah blah. But the thing is you know what? We can't go back to those times. You got to start where you are. You're here, so you got to start here, and that's the only place. That's the only point you have, is to start here.
Right.
Now, if you're prone to negative self-talk and if you're prone to negative thinking, well, then you're going to have a negative view of yourself for doing something that you view. And again, if you've been indoctrinated in guilt and shame and that stuff like you
It's a
did
big
with the
hole.
Catholic Church, it's
That's a big hole to climb out of, man.
it's a huge hole to climb out of, and then you become a Satanist on the other side. Ah! Hell,
There might be a stigma associated with that.
yeah, there's a lot of stigmas, stigmatas.
No, I actually do. I think that's a good way to start is with yourself, like you
Well,
said.
where else are you going to start?
Yeah.
You can't start with your neighbor, dude.
No, I know.
You got to start with you, because again, until you start with you, it's all projection. And then, and I had to really had to look at this in a different way. Like, I have a coworker who I call an arsonist because they want to play the superhero all the time. And it drives some of my coworkers insane, okay? Now, granted, the coworkers that it drives insane have been there far too long also. So everybody else has their own shit to
Sure,
worry about, okay?
sure.
I love them dearly. Love them. I have good coworkers, man. They're but again, like, for somebody who doesn't have as many years in and has his ears open, his eyes open, and is opening his heart, realizes that some of my own thoughts are just my projections onto people. And I have to learn that I have to give people a little bit more of the benefit of the doubt, because again,
Well, it's kind of like going with what I said earlier.
well, it's letting go too. It's just letting go to say I don't have to be right.
kinda
I
tell
don't have to be
yourself-
wrong.
Well, yeah, but telling yourself that they're doing the best they can, almost.
Yeah,
right?
even when you don't believe it.
Right. Yeah, I'm not saying I believe it all the
because I
time.
don't believe it either.
Right.
Because I know what I know what I'm doing.
Right. But I try to say it even when I don't believe it, because it's almost like I feel like eventually I'll be able to create a new pathway of it and just kind of be like, yeah, they're doing the best they can, without even like really fighting it and going, okay, they're they are doing the best they can. They are. And
Yeah, but you know goddamn well there's their voice in the back of your head that sounds like
Sure,
it's
there
Cartman saying they ain't fucking doing the
no,
best
they
they
ain't.
can.
No.
You know that.
You know, I wanted to actually just say, tell a little piece of a story here. One of the reasons why I came up, well, actually, I wanted to do a Stigma episode for a while, and because I don't think we ever really did anything specific to Stigma for some reason. Maybe we did, but I don't recall it.
I don't know, dude. It's been 2 years. I have no idea.
Yeah.
I can't tell you what we did a year ago.
But there was a situation where in my workplace where I had to use FMLA, and you know it starts to be, if you use it, you know, a certain amount of time, if you use it often or whatever, you know, and you can go and look at my record as for calling out sick or using any kind of time like that. It's far from excessive. It's the opposite word of whatever that would be. And but I got called into the office to be confronted about, you know, taking some time, and of course I was asked, well, can you prove this? Can you give us some documentation? And I was like, well, yeah, that's already been talked about. We've talked about this before. It's in my FMLA. It's all included in that, you know. And oh, okay. Well, okay. So it's like I'm bringing this up because I felt like there was a huge stigma about the whole situation, and I felt like I have to explain myself like every so often, like just to reiterate the boundary, so to speak. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that to be honest with you, that doesn't really sound too far-fetched that you have to restate it sometimes.
Really?
Yeah, because again, every situation is going to be different. Every situation is going to be different, and
I don't know. It bothers me, to be honest with you.
well, of course it does. It's you, so it bothers you. Of course it does.
Well, yeah.
And why wouldn't
I mean,
it?
but if it was anybody else, the same thing. It would bother me. You know, there's a guy in there that has, Crohn's, and he's called out a few times, and people may not know that he's got, a legitimate medical excuse, and they're like, oh, well, he just wanted to stay or whatever. You know what I mean? So there's like, you know what I mean? Just stigma in general, but it's like
right. But unfortunately, people are always going to think that. They're always going to think that. Always.
True.
So, because the thing is
I
that
guess the angle that I was kind of going at was more of like,
well, you feel stigmatized,
yeah,
and dude, I'm not saying that you're wrong for feeling that, because
right.
you're not, because those
are
are your feelings. But
I know. I just wanted to share it with, where the, kind of where what pushed me to more bring the episode to light, was that situation, and going, geez, like not that I was ignorant to saying that this didn't ever happen before, but it's just it was more I don't know why, it was more of a bright light this time. Like, really, like we've been over this numerous times. You know what I mean? Like it's like your kid comes to you for chicken nuggets, the third time in a week, and you're like, really? Like, do you really get surprised? Because they like them, so just make it. Just make them up,
Yeah, I guess. Yeah, chicken nuggets stigma.
I'm using it as a reference. You know what I mean? I'm just saying, like, if you were out because you got bit by a dog, no one would question it.
No, they would still question it.
Some people would.
They still question it. They're always going to question it. Unfortunately, when when you are affecting the whole, of course, there's going to be people that are going to be fucking pissed off, and there's going to be people that are be like, that's not true, or whatever. And in certain situations, though, you almost got to expect it. Now, that doesn't say it's any better, or it's any easier to deal with.
Right, but I think, but accepting it and just going, well, I think that's kind of giving into the just allowing the stigma to kind of carry on.
Yeah, it is, but is it really worth you taking all your energy
No.
and being negative about it,
Yeah,
because
no.
you're just hurting yourself.
Right. And I didn't do that. I was actually kind of, on a side note, I was kind of happy the way I handled it. I didn't really I didn't really get escalated or at all. I was just kind of like, okay, whatever, do what you got to do. It's kind of like, I know that I don't abuse the privilege that I have. So whatever, do what you got to do. Let me know. See you later.
Yeah, that's a good way to handle it.
Yeah. But I was proud of myself.
Because again, well, you should be.
I go back, 5, 6, 7 years, and it would have
Yeah, I can see
probably
this.
been ugly.
I've seen those. I've seen those. I know what that looks like.
been a different situation. So
Well, you showed some growth then.
yeah, you could say that. Yeah.
It doesn't make it any easier.
No.
Because again, here's the thing though. You are fighting something, unfortunately, that you're not going to change.
Right.
So without a change on yourself as far as taking yourself physically out of there, okay?
Right.
Unfortunately, dude, that's the only
I
that's
agree.
really it.
I agree.
That
You're
is the
absolutely right.
only that's the only option. It's you have to take yourself out of there.
I'm just acknowledging it and sharing the story because it fit, and
I'm glad you did. I'm absolutely glad you did. But again, every situation is different.
right.
So, it's hard to give a full assessment.
No,
But I
no.
totally understand where the stigma, where it's stigmatizing to you. I get it. I totally get it.
Yeah.
And I understand it.
Have you had to deal with that at all with your job? They pretty cool.
This job, no, dude. I haven't had any of that, man. I talk very openly about everything at my job now, and when I say, like, people are like, my wife especially, she's like, you let people know. Yeah, you know why I let people know? Because that's the only way that you're going to stop any of this stuff. You don't stop stigma,
By ignoring it.
right? You don't
and not
stop
talking
stigma
about it.
by ignoring it,
Right.
By
With
not
anything,
talking
really.
about for anything. You just don't.
Right.
It doesn't happen.
Right.
So you gotta.
It's it's one of those things where, which we really say this often, but it's one of those tough conversations, but those are the ones that you sometimes need to have, You need to open up that conversation. And
The thing is, though, that you're not going to open up that conversation in your current.
right. Yeah. No, I get it. In certain, yeah.
Because
You can't go-
unfortunately,
you
for
can't-
you to open up that conversation, there's a whole other.
Yeah.
There's a whole other paradigm that you
can't
gotta,
go to a burger joint and order a pizza. You know what I mean? And get pissed that they don't have pizza. It's just,
Right.
It's just kind of
Right.
pointless.
I agree with you on that. And again, you got to understand too that some things just aren't worth the fight either.
Yeah.
Because not everything
No.
is, man. Not
I
everything
know.
is worth dying for. Not everything is. You know what I mean? You
I
can
don't know. I think
replace
I was-
some cash. You can
I think
replace
I was
a
Braveheart
wallet.
in my former life. I think I was William Wallace.
Yeah, not everything is for us to fight. Not everything is, and it's hard to get it's hard to take that out of the equation sometimes. I mean, look, stigma is terrible. Stigma stops people from accessing services and treatments. Okay, stigma stops people from leaving their house. Stigma stops people from reaching out. It stops them from living their full life and being a part of the community.
Yeah, it's true.
But I also don't think that everything is worth fighting over, because that's exhausting in itself too. And how can you get any better if you're constantly trying to catch up on the energy level? You know what I mean?
But yeah, at the same time, though, when you say fighting, it doesn't necessarily have to be, what most of us picture fighting to be. It could just be.
Dude, when I say fighting, I'm talking about
front lines.
I'm talking about whatever it is that you think by getting upset is going to change. I'm talking about fighting anything. I'm not talking about physical fights. Okay?
No, I know.
I'm talking
I know
about.
that. I
I'm
did
talking
that.
about the emotional, the you know,
Right.
these esoteric fights that we so honestly take on. Again, I mean, look at it, man. A lot of people are just willing to take whatever anybody hands them at face value
Sure.
and fight for it. On either side, doesn't matter.
Well, I think 'cause
without
a lot of-
questioning,
a lot of
without
people are
even looking at the facts.
They're just looking for attention, acknowledgement, validation, whatever it may
Well,
be.
they're also looking because, well, again, we all want to be right. Nobody wants to be wrong. So somebody has to accept being wrong. And I think that you become a bigger person by accepting the fact that, okay, maybe I'll just be wrong over here because this is not worth the fight.
Right.
Because they're going to think I'm wrong no matter what anyway.
Sure.
So
No, I get that.
So it's not worth it. It's not worth it. It's not worth the time. It's not worth the energy. It's not worth the spit. It's not. Spit. It's right. It's not. It's not worth any of it.
So what are you all doing for stigma out there?
Well, what's your takeaway from today about stigma?
Takeaway from stigma. I would probably say, what you said earlier is to kind of focus more on yourself and look within and kind of let it, bleed out on its own and see where that goes,
I wouldn't suggest anybody bleed out.
Well, yeah, I couldn't find a better word to use. I still can't think of a better word to use.
See, we're all plugged into the matrix, man. And I think our idea of separateness from each other, separateness from our environment, separateness from nature, separateness from animals, separateness from whatever that spiritual type thing gives you is the problem. And I think because we've been told so many times that we are separate from what gave birth to us or where we came out of and everything. Like we're indoctrinated into this life of separateness. You're an original sin. You're this, that, you're not. Actually, you know what? That's all bullshit because you are it. There is nothing else, okay? Heaven and hell reside within. And the only way that you can fight stigma is by going within and changing yourself. And by changing yourself, I'm not talking about you can't change the physical stuff until you change the mental stuff. Because it all starts in the mental. You can't have physical health without mental health. Stop thinking they're separate. Stop thinking you're separate. Stop thinking you're not a beautiful, perfect soul. You are. You're just mired in a bunch of bullshit that you bought into that you're just starting to separate yourself from. That's all. That's all it is.
Well said.
That's all it is, man. It's all smoke and mirrors and bullshit.
So if you're listening on Apple Podcasts, you can always like the episode, rate it.
And
subscribe.
even leave a review and tell me I'm full of shit if you want. That's okay too. I don't care.
Yeah, you can say that. Although this one, I don't think I would disagree with the person that says that.
You would just disagree just to disagree.
Sometimes. But if you're listening on Spotify, share it with someone that you might think would enjoy it. You can find us on any of the social media platforms. You can connect with us through email at abovegroundpodcast.net.
No.
Gmail.
Podcast@gmail.com.
Sorry.
Dude, you got it wow.
Abovegroundpodcast@gmail.com.
You're my creative guy?
I am.
Wow.
I just try to make us look pretty. You're the one that does all the legwork.
Dude, you're the technology guy. You're the one who puts all that shit up. The language. Right. See, it's all about the language.
It is. I'm learning. But hey, you know what?
It's all about the language.
I'm learning. I give my effort. I do what I can, and I admit when I was wrong about it. So it's Gmail.
Wrong. He's wrong.
Everybody point at me and laugh.
He's the man with the funny hat. Look at him. Don't look behind the curtain.
Cone of shame.
Cone of shame. So thank you very much again for listening this week. We hope you enjoyed this conversation about stigma. Again, man, we are the Stigma Stompers.
Until next week,
Be well.
be safe.
Be above.
Down on my knees, begging for approval from a captor I can't name.